Hi, it's Katrina. Number 9. War of the Titans. The Titanomachy, or the War of the Titans, was a decade-long series of conflicts between an older order of gods, known as the Titans, and a younger generation called the Olympians. Before the war, the Titans were in power led by Uranus. He ruled alongside Gaia, the goddess of the earth, and together they had the Cyclopes, the 100-headed Hecatoncheires, and 12 Titans. But things took a dark turn when he made his wife Gaia very angry. He hated their children for fear they would rise up against him and take the throne, so he locked them up in the Tartarus, the deepest and darkest part of the underworld. This deep abyss was used as a dungeon of torment and the prison for the Titans. Gaia wanted to free her monstrous children so they could see the light and came up with a master plan. The only one that went along with it at first was her youngest child, the Titan Cronus. He helped convince some of his other siblings, and Gaia gave him a magical weapon to castrate his father. The plan worked, and Cronus tossed his father's genitals across the Mediterranean Sea and imprisoned him, making Cronus the de facto leader of the Titans. But Uranus placed a curse on Cronus so that his children would rebel against him, much like he had betrayed his own father. To stop this from happening, Cronus became evil and out of fear began eating his own children. He became ruthless and cruel, just like his father. His wife Rhea managed to save one of their children, Zeus. She smuggled him into a cave in Crete, where he was raised by a foster mother and a group of nymphs. Once he was grown, Zeus went to his father's mountain to work for him, all the while concealing his identity. He fed Cronus a mixture of mustard and vinegar, which caused him to throw up the children he had swallowed. Zeus and his newly freed siblings, the Olympians, rebelled against the Titans. Tensions erupted into full-blown warfare, and the fighting continued for 10 years. The Olympians won the war, and Zeus imprisoned all of the Titans except those who had fought for him. After the war, Zeus and his brothers divided the universe into 3 parts by drawing straws. Zeus became ruler of the sky, making him leader of all the gods and mortals. Poseidon became king of the sea, and Hades king of the underworld. Number 8. Echo and Narcissus. Narcissus was the strikingly beautiful son of the river god Cephissus and a nymph named Liriope. A blind seer told Liriope that Narcissus would live a long life, as long as he never saw his reflection. Both mortal and immortal men and women fawned over Narcissus. One of his countless admirers was a nymph named Echo. She too was very good-looking and found herself turning away the advances of both the sun god Apollo and the fertility god Pan. While walking through the woods one day, Echo saw Narcissus deer hunting and immediately fell hopelessly in love with him. Sensing that someone was watching him, Narcissus called out, eventually coaxing Echo out from her hiding spot. But he rejected her because he was incapable of loving anyone other than himself. Heartbroken, Echo fled the scene, leaving only her voice behind. Displeased with how Narcissus acted, the goddess of retribution, Nemesis, caused him to see his own reflection when he bent down over a pool of water to get a drink. He was so taken by his own image, he fell in love with himself. But he couldn't get the object of his attraction, much like Echo and the others he had cruelly rejected throughout his life. Narcissus wasted away next to the pool of water in a state of despair and sorrow that ultimately killed him. Even to this day, these stories remain a part of our everyday life. Echo's voice was the only thing that remained. Narcissus was only able to love himself, and even Nemesis, being the goddess of retribution, all make sense as to how we use these words in modern language. Number 7. Apollo captains a ship as a dolphin. Greek culture revolved heavily around its seafaring activities in the Mediterranean. The ocean and marine creatures were a huge part of their day-to-day life, so it's no wonder that dolphins appear often in the civilization's artwork, literature, and mythology. Plus, who doesn't love dolphins? Homer's Hymn to Apollo is one of the earliest known Greek dolphin stories. Its main character, Apollo, was the god of many things, including the sun, the arts, medicine, shepherds, and prophecy. He was the most widely worshipped of all the Greek gods. After traveling all over Greece in search of a site for his new temple, Apollo settled on a cave at the foot of Mount Parnassus. He killed the cave's guard, a dragoness named Python, and then searched for a Cretan merchant ship to hijack. Disguised as a dolphin, Apollo jumped aboard a vessel. The terrified crew hid below deck while the god controlled the winds to steer the ship back to his temple. Once there, Apollo made his hostages live at the temple and serve him as priests. The story played an integral role in spreading Apollo's cult throughout the ancient Greek world and beyond. It represented a clash between ancient civilizations and the replacement of one culture with another. Number 6. Perseus and Medusa. Perseus was a demigod born to the god Zeus and a mortal woman named Danae. He was highly intelligent and incredibly strong. Medusa, on the other hand, was once a beautiful priestess dedicated to Athena, but she was cursed forever for breaking her vow of celibacy. According to legend, when Medusa lay with the sea god Poseidon, Athena was furious and turned her into a monster. She made her hideous, turning her hair into snakes and banishing her to a cave. Anyone who made contact with the hideous Gorgon turned to stone. She was no longer a woman, but an evil creature. In a bid to distract Perseus from assuming the throne as the next heir in line, King Polydectes sent him on a mission to kill Medusa. To help him on his quest, Athena and Hermes gave Perseus a pair of winged sandals, a sword, a mirrored shield, and a hat that made him invisible. Medusa was asleep when he entered her cave. Perseus cleverly used the mirrored shield to approach Medusa backwards and avoid looking her in the eyes. When he got close enough, he decapitated her with his sword. He put her head in his bag and returned home, using her head as a weapon to turn enemies into stone. Along the way, he decided to marry a beautiful woman named Andromeda. Using Medusa's head, he turned Phineus, the man she was promised to, into stone. How convenient. When the newlyweds arrived back at headquarters, Perseus used Medusa's head to turn King Polydectes into stone. Athena placed an image of Medusa's head on her own armor. The Greek used this story as an example of personal strength, courage, and intelligence, as well as the admirable lengths Perseus went to save his loved ones. Medusa and her story is still extremely popular, and you'll find the design in various pop culture elements, but it's particularly famous as the symbol of the fashion house Versace. Number 5. Lycurgus is punished with madness. Lycurgus was the king of a Thracian tribe called the Edoni, and for whatever reason, he really disliked the wine god Dionysus. He went as far as banning people from worshipping Dionysus and throwing the god's followers in jail. Dionysus fled to the bottom of the sea, but in doing so, he wasn't admitting defeat. He punished Lycurgus from a distance by driving him insane. In his maddened state, Lycurgus started murdering his family members. He mistook his son for a tree trunk, which is a holy symbol of Dionysus, and killed him. Lycurgus also slayed his wife and other children. Thrace became barren and dry, and Dionysus said that it would stay that way until Lycurgus faced due punishment for his actions. Some versions of the myth claim that the local people overthrew Lycurgus by tying him up and feeding him to man-eating horses. Another version holds that Lycurgus accidentally cut off his own foot and died, and then the curse was lifted. Whatever the case, the disgraced leader was gone, and Thrace became abundant once more. Dionysus was clearly not to be trifled with. What do you think of this story? Did the punishment fit the crime, or was Dionysus a bit heavy-handed in his revenge? Let me know in the comments below. Number 4. Persephone. Persephone's parents were Zeus and Demeter, the Greek goddess of harvest and fertility. As Persephone grew into a beautiful young woman, drawing throngs of admirers, Demeter fought to keep the men away. She had an overbearing love for her daughter and wanted Persephone all to herself. Hades, the god of the underworld, didn't let Demeter's intimidating and controlling ways stop him from pursuing Persephone. When Demeter turned down his offer to take her daughter's hand in marriage, Hades remained undeterred. One day, while Persephone was picking flowers, he opened the earth and emerged in his chariot. Before she could do so much as scream, Hades snatched the girl and took her back to the underworld with him. Everything happened so quickly, nobody nearby saw the abduction. Zeus and the sun god Helios had witnessed it, but they kept quiet to avoid stirring up drama. Demeter searched tirelessly for Persephone. She persuaded Helios to tell her what he had seen, and was devastated to learn that her daughter was living in the underworld. The distraught mother abandoned her divine duties to grieve and to punish ancient Greece. Plants died and drought set in, threatening the food supply. Soon enough, animals began to perish. As things descended into chaos, Zeus approached Demeter and said that if she could prove that Persephone was being held against her will, he would help free her from Hades. To Demeter's surprise, her daughter said that she was happy in her marriage. This enraged Demeter, and she vowed to never restore fertility to the planet. Zeus thankfully negotiated an agreement where Persephone would divide her time between the underworld and the world that her family lived in. Demeter wasn't thrilled about the arrangement, but she accepted it. The Greeks used this myth to explain the cycle of the harvest. During the autumn and winter months, when Persephone was with Hades, Demeter became sad and shirked her duty to ensure a bountiful harvest. Crops were abundant during the spring and summer, which Persephone spent with her mother, and it was enough of a balance to ensure that the population had an ample food supply. Number 3. The Legend of Odysseus. Odysseus was a legendary Greek king who ruled the island kingdom of Ithaca. He fought in the Trojan War and masterminded the plan that effectively destroyed the city of Troy. Homer wrote about the leader's wartime experience in his epic poem, The Iliad. It was followed by the Odyssey, which details Odysseus's 10-year journey home after the war. When the Trojan War broke out, Odysseus and his queen Penelope had a newborn son named Telemachus. Odysseus didn't want to leave his family behind, but a prophecy called him to join the Greek army and fight. The Trojan War droned on for a decade. Toward the end of it, Odysseus instructed the army to build the famous Trojan horse. Loaded with some of the best Greek warriors, this gigantic hollow wooden vessel would be a fake peace offering to the enemy. The genius behind this incredible legend was Odysseus, and this is just one of many examples of why he was known for being extremely clever. The Greeks ravaged Troy, and this angered the gods. To punish the victorious army, they caused heavy winds to set in during the journey back to Ithaca. Odysseus and his men were blown off course, and it took them 10 years to get back home. They made several stops along the way, including a run-in with the Cyclops and a trip to the underworld where no man had ever gone alive. At one point, a nymph named Calypso found Odysseus unconscious on a beach. He stayed with her for 7 years before deciding that he missed his family and needed to continue on his journey back to Ithaca. Odysseus entered the city disguised as a beggar. Nobody recognized him at first, and he was angered to learn that many suitors had pursued Penelope over the years and were continuing to do so. He massacred the men, and through a few more tests of loyalty, the bond between Odysseus and his wife proved resilient. Kind of ironic considering he spent 7 years lounging beachside with Calypso, but that's ancient Greek mythology for you. Telemachus was eventually crowned the king of Ithaca. Odysseus went and ruled elsewhere and died separated from his loved ones. Number 2. Pygmalion and Galatea. Pygmalion was a talented sculptor who carved ivory into impressively lifelike statues. With a natural eye for beauty, he had a deep appreciation for the female form. But Pygmalion only liked his picture-perfect work. He despised actual women and vowed to never marry. The eccentric artist fell especially in love with one of his creations named Galatea. Pygmalion doted on the inanimate object as if she was his living, breathing lover. Love quickly turned into obsession, and the sculptor spent all his time staring at Galatea. Aphrodite heard about the sculpture and had to see it for herself. She was flattered to see that Galatea looked a lot like her. Aphrodite, being the goddess of both love and beauty, had always responded well to flattery. The goddess granted Pygmalion's wish of turning Galatea into a real person, and soon enough, her pale cheeks became flushed as the first signs of life appeared. The couple fell madly in love and got married, and the rest is history. They had a son and a daughter and lived happily ever after in wedded bliss. Number 1. The Amazons. According to legend, the Amazons were a tribe of fierce female warriors who rebelled against their male-dominated society. Rumored to be the most powerful group of women that ever lived, they lived completely separate from men, even in their own fortresses and cities. These warriors were a formidable force who could hold their own in combat just as well as anyone. They dressed like men, rode horses like men, and had tattoos like men. The Greeks saw them as quite the threat. Hercules, Theseus, Achilles, and other mythological male characters often had to fight against the Amazons as a way of proving that they were worthy warriors. Experts have long debated over whether this fierce tribe ever really existed. In recent years, they've uncovered burials throughout the Mediterranean belonging to the nomadic Scythian culture. DNA tests revealed that some of these graves contained the remains of women who bore combat injuries and were laid to rest with weapons. Known for their ferocity, the Scythians lived in small groups that required all able-bodied members to be willing to go to war if duty called, including women. It's incredibly rare to unearth an ancient tomb belonging to a woman with weapons in it. The Scythians were one of few cultures who allowed females to fight. There are differences between the Scythians and the fabled Amazons. For example, the Amazons isolated themselves from men, while there was no such gender division among the Scythians. But there are many similarities. Like the Amazons, the Scythians smoked pot, tattooed themselves, and rode on horseback. The evidence suggests that even if the Amazons are mythical, it's entirely possible that they were inspired by the Scythians. Thanks for watching! What's your favorite story from mythology? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to hear more of stories like these. See you soon!